Today we've got a great malicious compliance story resulting in a major hotel bill. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, she wanted her gender reveal to be unforgettable, so I made sure it was, and put out a fire while doing it. This happened last weekend, and I still can't believe the chaos that unfolded. My coworker Ashley has been planning her gender reveal for months. She was set on making it the most epic event ever. She rented out a section of a busy park, invited about 50 people, and kept hyping it up like it was going to be a legendary moment. At one point, she mentioned she was going to set off a huge smoke bomb to reveal the gender. I'm talking a massive smoke bomb that would cover the entire park with thick, colorful smoke. She was convinced it would be amazing and unforgettable. Now, I've seen a lot of gender reveals, but this sounded like a disaster waiting to happen, so I raised some concerns. I said, Ashley, are you sure this is allowed at the park? I know they have some strict rules about fireworks and pyrotechnics. Have you checked with anyone first? She waved me off and said, it'll be fine, no one will care, the park will love it, it's just a little smoke. I wasn't convinced, so I tried again. Ashley, that's not just a little smoke, that thing is huge, and it could easily catch fire or cause a panic with the neighbors. Have you thought about how dangerous it could be? Ashley laughed and said, you're just saying that because you've never done something this cool. Trust me, no one will care. It's going to be incredible and you'll be jealous you didn't think of it. At that point, I realized there was no stopping her. She was determined to go through with it, no matter the consequences. So I decided to fully comply with her plan. She wanted it big? Fine, I'd let her have it, and make sure it was unforgettable in every possible way. The day of the reveal, I show up to the park. Ashley's grinning like a maniac, holding this massive smoke bomb in her hands ready to light it up. I'm not about to let her handle that thing by herself. No way. I'm going to make sure the reveal is unforgettable, but I'm not going to let her burn the place down in the process. She lights the bomb, and within seconds, a huge cloud of smoke starts filling the air. But as the smoke rises, something goes wrong. A spark from the bomb lands on the dry grass below it, and the grass immediately catches fire. Ashley sees the fire and starts panicking. Put it out, she screams at me. So I do exactly what she tells me. I grab a nearby bucket, fill it with water, and dump it on the fire, putting it out before it can spread. But as I'm doing this, Ashley freaks out. What the heck are you doing? She yells. You're ruining the reveal. It's supposed to be unforgettable, not about putting out fires. I just look at her and say, well, the fire needed to be put out before it can spread. You didn't think a giant spark from a huge smoke bomb could catch the grass on fire? She's livid now. I don't care about the fire. The point was for everyone to see the smoke and get excited. You ruined it. While she's yelling, fire alarms start blaring in multiple nearby houses. People think there's a real fire and 911 calls start coming in. The fire trucks arrive, sirens blaring, and now we've got a full-blown emergency response happening because of a gender reveal. The firefighters start walking door to door checking for actual fires, and when they realize it's just a smoke bomb, they're not happy. They give Ashley a hefty fine for violating public safety regulations and causing a disturbance. Meanwhile, the park staff is furious and they shut down the event early. The park is evacuated and everyone is stuck standing around in the smoke while the fire trucks block the road. The next day at work, Ashley walks in fuming saying, "Can you believe what happened?" she rants. The fire department was totally overreacting and the neighbors were acting like it was the end of the world. And you ruined the whole thing by putting out the fire. I needed that to burn for the full effect. I just smiled and shrugged. Ashley, I did exactly what you asked. You told me to put out the fire, and I did. But maybe next time, think about the consequences before lighting off a giant smoke bomb in a public park. She went absolutely red in the face and called me unsupportive and overbearing, saying I should have let it burn. But honestly, I just complied with her request and followed through. She wanted an unforgettable reveal, and I made sure she got exactly what she asked for. Just with a little extra fire safety along the way. If you choose that you want to be incredibly damaging to the ecosystem on your gender reveal party, can we at least stick to like the helium balloons that are filled with glitter? You know, something that's at least not dangerous to people's lives or livelihoods? I don't know, I guess even with the balloons you could pop it and go, wow, and all the glitter just immediately goes straight to your lungs. Basically, I think they need to get me on the next Final Destination script writing team. Sir Gatekeeper85 commented, "Mine was pretty epic and amazing. We knew beforehand, so we baked and dyed our own cake, frosted it black, and made it look like a card from Cards Against Humanity. Everyone arrives, gets 5 white cards from the game, fill in the blank. The winner, my brother, cut the cake, and then we spent 4 hours drinking and playing Cards Against Humanity." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is Landscaper Survey. Just read the other top post about taking a bank survey repeatedly, and it reminded me of my survey story. About 3 years ago, my wife and I bought our house. We realized at the time that most of the house maintenance was poorly maintained. Renters used to live in the house before us. One of the larger projects that needed to be done was a full driveway replacement, as the original driveway hadn't been refinished or maintained in almost 30 years. Knowing that we would need to replace the driveway, my wife and I started planning ahead for the eventual project. We decided at the time that we would also like to expand our driveway. We were one of only 3 houses in my neighborhood to not have a 3-car garage, so we decided that we would expand our driveway out so that we could at least have a 3rd stall, even if it was outside of our garage. In order to expand the driveway, we had to get 3 bids out. Bid 1 was for the driveway people themselves, 1 was to our underground sprinkler maintenance as the expansion would move our existing lines, and finally, due to our land not being 100% flat, the final bid was to a landscaper to build a retaining wall in order to create a flat enough spot to expand our driveway. Due to the various companies working on this project, it meant that we had to make sure all 3 companies could work within the same timelines. The sprinklers were simple enough and not really an issue. The driveway people were great and gave us over a month of wiggle room to make everything work. The problem came from the landscaping company. We made them intimately aware of our timelines and explained the scope of the work, and they assured us multiple times that the deadlines would work. We had the landscapers scheduled for the first week after the driveway was ripped up. However, the landscapers never showed up. We called and rescheduled for the next week, and again, the landscapers didn't show up. This happened twice more before it was literally the day before the driveway people were due back to finish the driveway, and the landscaping was still not done. The landscapers finally showed up, and I talked to them before I left for work that day. Gave them my cell phone and some Gatorades before I left, and told them if there were any issues to please call me immediately. Got home from work to find 0 progress done on the project. Turns out the second I'd left, the landscapers packed up and went to another job. I actually called the owner and benched out his team. I have never been so mad about something. The project manager called me back and assured me that they wanted the driveway done first and the landscaping would follow, and that he would personally fix anything that was messed up as a result. Fine. The driveway was poured and the results were to be expected, pretty brutal. About a week later, the landscapers finally built their wall and then added some finishing crap to the driveway. It looked terrible, especially for a brand new driveway. Then they sent me my bill for the completed job. I immediately wrote back with pictures and explained that I was not paying for this job until it didn't look like crap, and that I expected the landscapers to fix the mess they made. Well, I got ignored. At this point, they had started ignoring most of my communications. Until that is, about 3 months passed, and the landscaper realized I was serious about not paying for their shoddy work. They reached out to me to figure out what was going on, which is when they finally looked at my email about the terrible work and my refusal to pay. By this point in time, it was Christmas and everything around me was frozen. The landscaper lamented not having a chance to fix their shoddy work before months had passed, and I lamented them ignoring my communications about the project being subpar in the first place. We discussed some ways to fix their freak up and settled on one that would at least make things look nicer, but would reduce my driveway width by about a foot. A solution I didn't like, but it would at least mostly fix my issues. I left for work one day and came home to my driveway fixed. No note, no communications, they just came in and did it one day when they had time. Again, not exactly how I would have wanted it, but it was okay. My wife and I went back and forth before ultimately deciding to just pay everything, swear off the landscaper forever, and move on. The whole project had taken over 6 months and we were just done with it all. We paid the bill and moved on. About 5 months later, just before spring and summer was set to start, the landscaper started spamming my inbox with requests for reviews. This is right when most project biddings go out, so they were looking to boost their online visibility and to get projects for the next year. I ignored the first 10 or so emails that came through before deciding maybe I can actually write them a review. And I did. I wrote the exact experience I had with them, highlighted the lack of communication, the unprofessionalism, the frequent missed deadlines, and I even included pictures. Within a week, I received a Google reward because my review had over 1,000 views. The owner actually called me after another week and asked what he could do to make things right, which I told him that we were almost a year from the original project without a time machine. There wasn't much we could do. All in all, the project was kind of a failure. We expanded the driveway, but it's now a very tight squeeze, and so people rarely use the third slot. I now mostly just get mad when I see the retaining wall. I did get a ton of Google rewards for my review, and I hope it saved a ton of people the headache I went through with a landscaper. I was content with letting them screw me over and just moving on with the lesson learned, but they were persistent with their email campaign. Maybe don't ask people you screwed over to write your reviews. I've had a similar experience. Thankfully, it wasn't like the work itself was bad, but it was more so getting charged extra for materials that really I felt was so unnecessary and just seemed extra money grubby. After they show up personally to collect the check from me, they start calling me on my phone saying, "Hey, could you leave us a Google review?" I was like, "Oh sure, I'd be happy to," and then I just never did. Which, to be honest, I probably should have just left a negative review. Xaviera commented, "Why not hire a different landscaper when the first one failed to show up?" Opie responded saying, "Bidding is a lengthy process. From start of bid until project completion, you're looking at 30 to 60 days minimal. By the time the original landscaper failed to show up, I had less than 30 days to complete the project, hence the rescheduling. We also would put down money as a deposit for the project, so once we'd committed to the original landscaper, we were functionally stuck. The bigger deal is that the landscaper frequently oversold their team, and because our project was only a few grand, the 5 to 6 figure projects they got were consistently prioritized over our existing bid. My takeaway from all of this is that I should have hired someone who could both do driveway and landscaping and had them handle the entire project. However, anyone with the capabilities to do both weren't interested in our relatively small project. Our next story is Nursing Time Theft Shenanigans. Backstory: for the past few years, I've been a nurse. I spent the first part of my career in the emergency at a small hospital in Canada. We can do basic admissions, surgeries, and critical care, but we'll transfer the really sick ones to larger metropolitan hospitals with more services like cardiology or trauma surgery. Because the population we served was so small, we ran the bare minimum of nurses to keep the department afloat, usually resulting in an extra patient per nurse compared to other hospitals but with a lower acuity level, on average, so it balances out. As a result, we would often be overwhelmed during the second half of day shift and the start of the night shift when it was the most busy. But due to low volumes of patients later on in the night, we often were well enough staffed to easily handle the workload. I.e., we could safely run even fewer nurses, but management hadn't gone there. Secondly, because we ran with such a small number of nurses, we never had break cover. So if your nursing partner was on break, you would watch double the number of patients. Not a big deal at night, but during the day, this could result in missing our last 30-minute unpaid break on the day shift due to high workload. A last piece of info is that we use teams of one emergency nurse, a nurse extra trained to have a higher scope of care, and one med-surg nurse, seasoned nurse awaiting a spot in the additional training program. Because of this, the nurses would give and take report together, so instead of each nurse handing over 4 to 5 patients simultaneously, they hand over 8 to 10 together, so report takes twice as long. Our union had negotiated our contract to counteract any wage theft, allowing us to sign for our unpaid 30-minute break at overtime rates of 1.5 times pay. We missed this break maybe every other day shift, so once during a 2-day, 2-night rotation, as well as sign for an additional 15 minutes of straight time pay in case handover went over our 12-hour shift. which was always. Of course, management didn't like having to pay this out, but it wasn't an issue because we, the nurses, were also stealing time. I know it doesn't sound great, but on those quiet night shifts, we would often take an extra 30 to 45 minutes to sleep, which balanced out those 1.5 to 2 hours of lost pay from the day shifts and handover. Because the workload was so low at the time and because only one emergency physician was on at night, it could easily be managed by one nurse, so patient throughput was the same as if 2 nurses were working. We often sit around waiting for orders from the doctor. Furthermore, nurses always left their number with their partner so we could be called back early if it kicked off and needed all hands on deck. Obviously, if we had many very sick patients, we stuck to the entitled amount only or missed it entirely. Everyone was happy for the first few years I worked there. The management, and therefore government, saved the extra pay without affecting patient throughput, and the extra sleep time on break really helped to maintain nurse well-being, as well as making the switch from nights back to days much easier. Then, one of our less pleasant charge nurses got angry at this. The charge nurse role is like the boss of the unit. On most units with admitted patients, this was an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday type gig that was covered by regular bedside nurses when the charge nurse wasn't there. In emergency, however, we had specific nurses working rotating shifts in this role with a small pay bump and any gaps in the schedule filled by very senior emergency nurses, as it was a much more unique beast to manage. I say this only to give the benefit of the doubt that this nurse was probably stressed out like crazy every shift. So I'm sitting at work in the morning waiting for the inevitable onslaught when the email pops up stating night shifts are to be limited to union-mandated break time only. I'm a bit ticked off at it, but ultimately they are right. We're only entitled to a 60-minute of unpaid break time and 45 minutes of paid break time, and to be fair, some nurses were definitely abusing the previous system. One nurse who covered charge would advocate for over 3.5 hours of break time on a night shift, regardless of how sick the patients were, and that would affect patient safety as it bled into the first part of the night when we were actually still busy. Most of the nurses refused to follow them on this. However, people like this were rare. Most nurses don't come to the emergency to be lazy. This email soon got posted in our group chats so everyone's aware. A lot of the younger staff, millennials at this time, were aware of our rights and immediately started signing for all missed breaks as well as additional handover time, as well as helping the older staff understand the contract. I missed my last break that shift and stayed until quarter past shift change for report, so I got an extra $50 gross in my paycheck for that. The charge nurse on that day was surprised when I presented the OT form for their signature, but I just told them that I was following the rules to prevent any pay discrepancies. My next shift at night, there was a sign-in sheet on the desk for us to write our in and out time for breaks, with a space for our phone number too, so they could call us back, even though we weren't paid the extra $4 an hour to be on call, and calling us back should have been paid at overtime rates per the contract. I refused to leave my number, stating that unless there was a code blue, medical emergency, usually means there's no pulse, there was no way I was coming back early. Code blues were called overhead, so they didn't need my number. For the next 2 weeks, I stuck to the contract. Every missed break and extended handover was documented, and of course I signed in and out of my breaks on the dot. I spent so much time on night shifts staring at my phone, waiting for the doctor to give me something to do as I'd caught up with everything else. It might not seem like a lot, but that extra hour of handover pay and occasional missed breaks per shift set would have added up to roughly $2,000 extra per year per full-time nurse, which is a decent amount of change to a publicly funded healthcare system. Eventually, the manager noticed and came around clarifying that while they would sign for any extra wages if we wished, we could also choose to sleep extra on nights if we wished, providing we left our number. I asked for them to email that to me, and while I could have sent that straight to the union rep, I didn't bother, as I'd already gotten the sleep time back. I left that job later on and have been very happy at a much bigger hospital for 2 years now. Now I have a nurse come cover mine and my partner's break. There's no teams, and they encourage us to take longer breaks when possible to prevent staff burnout, which was really prevalent at this one. I now document my missed breaks and extra sleep time to make sure it matches up. They're also willing to sign for missed breaks on top of that to help staff retention, but my conscience doesn't let me go that far. I'm just happy to sleep. I have a lot of respect for people who work in a hospital because I can imagine the hours and the work you do is and can be pretty brutal. I mean, I don't know if it's exaggerated, but on TV you see these depictions of doctors who are doing these shifts where they actually have like sleep breaks. I mean, it just seems like you have to have a lot of fortitude and love for the job to be able to stick through that, and realistically, letting them take these 30 to 40-minute breaks when there's so low stakes and it doesn't make an issue, if you can help prevent that burnout, you probably should let those nurses do so. Forsaken Hearing 7172 commented, "Working a healthcare job with a very similar setup right now. On quiet nights, we take 2 hours break each, with the understanding we'll come back to cover if there's an emergency. On busy nights, I'm lucky if I get 5 minutes to grab a cup of coffee. It's one of the reasons I love working nights. With management not around, the whole vibe shifts to much more give and take, and we're so much more flexible and close-knit than the day team." OK Initiative 2678 commented, "It's why I loved working weekends when I had a call center job too. Business slowed to a crawl on Saturday and Sunday, so we only staffed one team. Maybe 10 agents, 1 lead, 1 soup, and even then we each took maybe a quarter the number of the calls you'd normally field on a weekday. Generally led to a much more chill atmosphere, and we consistently had the most technically competent agents, best metrics, and best survey ratings in the whole building. Of course, that all evaporated when our old manager retired and the new one came in with something to prove, pulled exactly this kind of 'you must adhere to the letter of policy at all times' bullcrap, and to exactly nobody's surprise but hers, we all left for other employers or departments one by one. Last I heard was from a former coworker about a year later, and from what she knew, that manager's metrics were all shot to heck within a single quarter. Reap what you sow." Our next story is, "I made freight late because you couldn't compromise." So a few years ago, I got back into truck driving after my daughter was around 2 to 3 years old. There weren't many companies who would take someone that had been out of the game that long, so I had to settle on one of the bigger companies. What a mistake that was. Before this, I had no issues as a professional truck driver with having driver-facing or inward-facing cameras. I don't do anything illegal or stupid behind the wheel, so it didn't matter. It does now. This company had stuck the camera that faced inwards and outwards along the area where the visor would cover the windshield. As most things like this happen, it was a recordable offense to have the visor not only block out the sun from laser beaming me in the face, but having the visor down block the camera. I got calls about it constantly. I asked them what I should do. They say don't cover the camera. But the sun limits my vision. Don't cover the camera. I can't stick anything on the windshield to block the sun. This is unsafe. What do you want me to do? Don't block the camera. I asked them, can you move it somewhere else? No. How am I supposed to see during sunrise and sunset hours? Don't block the camera. It came down to them threatening my job and livelihood that if I blocked the camera one more time, they'd have to remotely deactivate the truck and force me out with a local police escort. So, I started to find nice safe places to stop every single early morning and evening when I was driving, where the sun would come through the windshield. My dispatcher, understanding of a man that he is, asked me why loads were being late and why I was stopping so frequently for so many hours, so I told him, safety wouldn't compromise and I can't freaking see out the window with the sun laser beaming me in the face. I'm not crashing into someone because a dinged camera is being blocked when I haven't done anything to warrant this kind of abuse. I apologized to him but told him this would continue. He was able to schedule loads out to where I had the stopping time, but ultimately they fired me anyway after 5 months. Bonus, I was told I was unsafe, stupid, shouldn't drive a truck, should find work that fits a woman better, and that I wouldn't be hireable anywhere, even in those sketchy second chance companies where the pay, equipment, and safety is crap. Joke's on them. After 2 years of running for a company that treats me like I'm a human being and not some seat-warming robot, 4 of their little company trucks have been seen by little old me in the ditch or median on I-29 this year after a 2-day winter storm. My truck? Still running, currently waiting on unload. Legitimately good on OP for not compromising their overall well-being, their safety, or the health of their eyeballs for that matter on this company. It's hilarious that this company said OP wouldn't be hireable anywhere, even in sketchy second chance companies where the safety is crap. Hello, read the room. MD Hewitt 1978 commented, "Good for you. My company installed those cameras about a year ago and they go off every time I move around the yard to hook up to a trailer. When it beeps at me, I look directly at the camera and smile. It's gone off when I was eating a banana, and I got a call from my manager saying that I gave the whole office a laugh when they heard me singing along to my music after it thought I was talking on the phone." Our next story is, "You want me to wait until the last minute to book my hotel?" Deal. I work remotely for a small company, around 100 employees, and based on my contract, I have to return to the office for a week 4 times a year. The last time I went back up was in November. In the contract, it's laid out that my employer pays 100% of hotel and gas and airfare. Normally, this is an extremely uneventful routine. It's a mid-sized Midwestern city with not much to do. It is what it is. A few months before I went back up, we had our financial audit, and one thing that was pointed out to our accounting department was a lack of controls on purchasing. The way it used to be was every manager or supervisor had a company credit card with a $1,500 balance, and as long as it stayed under that limit, we didn't have to do any kind of purchase orders. After our audit, my accounting team decided to make purchase orders 100% of their focus. Going forward, it doesn't matter what it was, what the situation was. If you didn't have an approved purchase order, you could not make the transaction. All this happened in early October as I was trying to book my hotel for my on-site week in November. Normally, I have freedom in choosing when I go on-site, but I was requested to go that specific week by my CEO and CFO as we were launching some strategic planning and they wanted me on-site. So I put the purchase order in for the hotel and I don't hear anything back. I forget about it for a couple of weeks and then remember mid-October that I still don't have a hotel room booked. When I initially made the request, it was about $550 for 4 nights. Looking again in mid-October, it was now up to $700 for 4 nights. I look around and notice that same week I'm supposed to go up, there's a concert in the same city followed by a big college sporting event in that town. I send an email to my accounting folks that I need to book a hotel, rates are going up, room availability is going down, yada yada yada. I get a tersely worded email back saying that everyone has different priorities and my purchase order will be addressed once all the ones before it are done. So I sit back and wait and keep checking every other day and keep seeing prices go up. I send a weekly email asking if it's approved yet, and I keep getting absolute silence back. Finally, a week before, I email my accounting team with the CFO included saying if I don't book a room that day, there wouldn't be any left, and I wouldn't be able to make it up for the strategic planning work. About 30 minutes later, I get back an email that says word for word, "You are authorized to reserve a hotel room for 4 nights." Cool, I book it. That $550 room is now $1,200. I book it and move on with my life and don't think any of it. Last week, I got around to uploading my credit card receipts and submitted my expense report, which included that $1,200 hotel stay. I got a call from my CFO today just exploding on me, furious about where the heck did I stay that cost that much and what was I thinking. I very calmly just forwarded the original purchase order and all the emails I sent saying that prices were raising. I had dead silence on the phone as he read through the email chains and just said, "For freak's sake," then hung up. At the end of the day, all supervisors got an email that the purchase order system was being shut down until they could figure out how to manage it better. I'm honestly kind of surprised that there's any actual analysis going on by the big dogs as to what happened here. I mean, it's just usually when you hear stories like this, it's that the company refused to do it any other way but their way, and they're just gonna eat the cost and keep moving on as if nothing ever happened. I guess the CFO was just looking for any way that they could hang this on OP and string OP up for the whole mess. Riva TNT 2M64 commented, "I will admit to being mildly surprised at the ending. Typically, especially in larger organizations, this kind of thing is the only flex the numbers guy can push onto other employees and will be lost in the far larger amounts moving about. What is a significant amount to an individual is less than a rounding error on corporate books, and will get missed and help preserve the number guy's ego. Seems like your company is small enough for it to be noticed, and the CFO knew you well enough to call you directly and get details unvarnished. And he was fast-acting enough to get the whole thing shut down when it obviously isn't working the way it's supposed to. Both are unlikely to happen in larger companies. Nice work on the cover your butt email, and the snarky reply is probably worth its weight in gold. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.